Today is June the 30th, 2023. My name is Tanya Finchum, and I'm with Oklahoma State University with the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. With me today is Dr. Trevor Richardson, who is the Director of Counseling and Sports Psychology for the OSU's Department of Intercollegiate Athletics, Athletic Department.
Mm-hmm.
We are in Gallagher, Iowa, on the OSU campus, and this interview will be part of the Stories from Oklahoma State University Oral History Collection and will focus on Pete's Pet Posse. By way of context, Pete's Pet Posse, OSU's pet therapy program, was established in 2013 as part of the university's commitment to being America's healthiest campus and is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. P3, as it is often referred to, supports emotional wellness for students, staff, and faculty and has grown beyond the OSU Stillwater campus. While it takes a team to get such an initiative off the ground, the involvement and support of Ann Hargis, former First Cowgirl, was and continues to be instrumental in its success. Dr. Richardson is currently on the advisory board for the program and has been since 2015, 2016, somewhere in there. Okay, with that said, thank you for meeting with me today. Before we get to the P3 program, let's learn a little bit about you. Start wherever you like.
Okay. I grew up most of my life in southwest Iowa, and I spent a little time up in Wisconsin, a little bit of time down in San Antonio, but for the majority of my childhood, lived there in southwest Iowa. It's a small town called Carson, about 900 people. Then went to school over in Pella, Iowa at Central College and did my undergraduate, and then worked for a year over in Omaha, Nebraska at a psychiatric hospital, and then decided I wanted to go back to graduate school, and had a friend down here at Oklahoma State said, just come down and visit and take a look, and I thought, when would I ever end up in Oklahoma? But yeah, I figured out, I'll go see my friend. Just looked around the campus, started talking to some of the faculty, and it felt like home. Really thought I'd spend 2 years of my life here, and that was starting in fall of '99. Came down for the master's program. The second year, I was working, doing my practicum sequence at University Counseling Services, and getting to interact with some of the doctoral students in the counseling psychology program, and they encouraged me to think about it, and that wasn't even on my radar at all. I thought, I'm going to work here for 2 years and then move off somewhere else and see where the world takes me, and maybe a PhD down the road, maybe not. But then when they said that, I thought, I'm back in the mode of school, and applied to the PhD program, got in, this continued on, finished my PhD here in counseling psychology at OSU, and then have been here most years since then. Spent a year up in Manhattan, Kansas, at Kansas State University's Counseling Center. Came back for a year, and then moved to Tallahassee, Florida for a year, worked at a prison down there. That was a whole different type of education for me. And then at that point, my then fiance, now wife, we talked about where we wanted to be that would be relatively close to both families, where we could drive. And we just kept coming back to Stillwater, just kept popping up. And so then we both ended up getting jobs in 2007 at University Counseling Services, and been here ever since. Yeah. And so was at University Counseling Services from 2007 until 2018, and then I transitioned over here to athletics to start their in-house mental health program as the first ever full-time psychologist with OSU Athletics.
Oh, and you're still here.
And I'm still here, yeah. It's just been 5 years here in June.
So we'll go back up a little bit. Back in Iowa, when you were just a little tot, what were you thinking you might be when you grew up? That famous question, what do you want to be?
I had it all planned out. Kansas City Royals were my favorite team, so I was going to be the next third baseman after George Brett. Now, unfortunately, my talents weren't quite as good as George Brett's. So, but I just always loved being involved in athletics. Whatever the season was, I was doing something. Then took that through high school. Lettered in 4 sports in high school, and then went on to college and played football at my college. And so I just always enjoyed that. And then, when I was young, besides sports, I really didn't know what I was going to do. And that had a big part to do with me choosing the college, which I did, which was happy since I met a professor in sports psychology. It was the first psychology class I ever took when I was a business management major. I just took it because I thought, hey, this might be something that'll help my football. And all of a sudden it was really interesting to me. So I went back and took general psychology and then abnormal psychology. And that coincided with me taking micro and macroeconomics, and I decided, no, I'm not a business management major anymore, but this psychology stuff really speaks to me. And so, decided to switch my major over there, and it's been a very, very good change for me. And then at that point, I started to see, okay, this is something I really want to do. I want to do psychology in the area of athletics. But at that point, back in the late 90s, these type of positions weren't very common at all. There might have been 1.5 in all of NCAA athletics back then, and that might be rounding up. So, but it's definitely been an area that has increased dramatically in utilization, which is a good thing with more student athletes and athletes in general speaking out about mental health. So it's been a good change, and the NCAA has put an emphasis on that. So that's one of the reasons why our now athletic director decided to go ahead and hire for this position, and he worked on it significantly when he was the deputy athletic director with me.
Oh, wow, it just was meant to be, wasn't it?
Yeah, it worked out very well. Yeah.
Had, like in your family, had someone else been involved with social work or psychology related field?
My second cousin's husband, who he was the whole counseling center for my undergraduate at Central College. He was because there was only one person and he was it, and so he did that for the entire campus. And so I picked his brain, after I switched over to psychology, I picked his brain a little bit now and again, and he helped me as far as, the GRE and, just things to look for and questions to ask about graduate programs, stuff like that. So John Dobenecker was definitely a good person to go to. He was always open to, talking to me and whatever questions I had and stuff like that. So that was helpful.
Well, had your parents been, were you, I don't know. Were you first gen, I guess I should say? Were you first generation, or had your parents gone, one of them or the other?
Both my parents did some junior college at the local community college, so they did that. But as far as a 4-year college, first gen.
First gen, and first with a PhD.
Yeah, and that's my extended family. I had quite a few cousins. Several of the 13 of us on my mom's side ended up getting 4-year degrees. And I'm the only one that went beyond that as far as any graduate degrees.
Cool.
Yeah.
And did you have siblings?
Yes. Yep. I have an older brother, Todd, and a younger sister, Jill, and they're both doing very different things than me and very different things than each other, but doing great things. My sister, Jill's very artistic, and she
got that gene.
Yeah, she does, and has been able to really navigate that into the business world, and does some consultation and different things like that for a company, and does a lot of customer relations stuff, and just really, really good at that. And then my brother he went to school, became a draftsman, did that for quite a while, and then switched gears, went down to Phoenix and went to this Harley-Davidson mechanic school, and then came back and worked in Omaha, close to our hometown, and then since has transitioned over to Peterbilt trucks, and now does parts management for them.
Yeah. Well, that takes a whole different set of skills, doesn't
it? Yes. Things that
they
ask me how I do what I do, and I ask them the same question.
Yes, I would too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what did you think about OSU when you first came down?
I came down during the summer, so it was quiet, but it just felt like it was very hot. It gets warm and humid in Iowa, but this is hotter and longer. The summer lasts so long. I always look forward to fall. But it just, the best way I can say it is, just felt like home. Everywhere I went, it seemed like, from my memory, that if I asked directions, they'd start explaining and then say, well, you know what, I'll just walk you.
Yeah.
And that happened on definitely multiple occasions, and that always stuck with me. So, fast forward years later, when I was with the University Counseling Services, our office was in the student union, and so I would frequently be, walking to the office, and whether it be parents at new student orientation, or just someone, you can just kind of tell that look in their eye when they're lost, because that's such an enormous building. And I found myself, well, you want to go down to the second floor and well, you know what, I'll just walk you, and then after, and I did that without even thinking, but then I'd reflect on it afterwards. I'm like, it feels good to be part of that OSU family, and you're just proud of our campus and proud of our school, and you just want to be helpful. And I just, love that land grant mission, just being helpful.
Did you get your first piece of orange that trip?
I don't think I did. No, I didn't. But it was very soon after that I did. And I've definitely, it's grown over the years.
So about timeline-wise, you finished high school in what year?
94.
And then graduated from your undergrad in
98.
And then came here that
99.
fall?
I took a year off,
Okay.
So I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I wanted to be done with school for a while. And actually my first job, during that year, I first started trimming trees for one of my dad's high school buddies. He just had a business that was just starting up. And so I worked with him for a while. And then got the job over in Omaha at a psychiatric hospital. So that was an amazing education. And that really helped me fine tune why I wanted to go to graduate school. Because I had friends that senior year that were saying, oh yeah, I'm going to here or there or wherever to graduate school. And I just thought, I'm ready to be done with school for now. But it just took me that 1 year, and I found my why. And then when I came back, I was much more motivated for school.
So where did you live when you came to Stillwater on campus?
I did not. I lived just north of campus.
Okay.
I still remember West Franklin. It was a little road actually just right across Washington Street from the president's mansion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So close enough to walk if you needed to.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So in 2000, you were in the student union in 2001 when the plane crash happened?
I was working for University Counseling Services. I remember that day very clearly. Me and my friends were actually at our house, and that news came across, and I still don't know why I did this, but I just immediately called Dr. Susie Burks, the director of University Counseling Services at the time, and said, Dr. Burks, what do you need me to do? And she said, just go to Bennett Hall, and there'll be some other counselors there. And so just went, just part of that response. And then the counseling center was very, very involved in the memorial service. So that was, experience that you don't expect to get as a practicum counselor, but it definitely shaped my whole future, both personally and professionally.
It involved sports again, so
Mm-hmm.
I can see how that.
Yeah.
And then you would have been there in 2011 for the second.
Yep. And so at that point, I was a full-time staff member, assistant director, and so my wife and I actually went to Shelley Budke's home and were there with her family on the day of the memorial, and just tried to provide whatever we could as far as them going through that process.
Right. And then again in 2015.
Yep. And so that day, I remember very clearly being, I wasn't at the parade, but got the call, and so of course I was over to the ER at Star Medical, and just trying to again do whatever we could to get services to those people that were struggling. And so much of that, it just learn more and more as you go along. And then that event completely changed my view of Pete's Pet Posse, because so on the day of, we were doing crisis response with the families, with all the survivors, with all that, and then that next Monday we started to go around to the offices that were most directly impacted. And I remember going with the first cowgirl, Aunt Hargis, and she had scruff with us, and so I would just talk with the staff members about parking. I remember going to parking services first, because the young lady whose son was killed, that's where she worked, and so we went and talked with her coworkers about just what they might expect. And then Mrs. Hargis had scruff there, and just went around, and after that meeting, the head of parking said to both of us, scruff went right to the guy that needed it the most. He said that was the guy that I was worried about the most. He hasn't been talking about it at all, and then after he started scratching scruff behind the ears a little bit, and all of a sudden he said a couple of things. He didn't, it wasn't an open book or anything like that. We wouldn't expect that in that situation, but he then shared a little bit, and that was so reinforcing to the head of parking over there at the time. And so at that point, the light bulb just went off. Before, I thought Pete's Pet Posse is so great. The students love interacting with them. It's good stress management. It's got all that type of stuff. But I had never thought of it as a crisis management tool. But it disarms people. There's all the research that shows as far as the physiology, the health benefits of that. But also those interactions, it just can disarm people, because you talk with people afterwards, and the dog's not going to judge me. It's just there for me, scratching me on the ears, and they just give you that unconditional positive regard, and it just lowers those defenses and allows people to open up. And so, you talk to any of the handlers, and they deserve honorary doctorates in counseling with, everything they see and hear and how they interact with the students now. But I remember that Monday. So we went to about 3 different offices, and was there with the sergeant the whole time, and we just kind of share what we can do. And then Scruff was there to kind of give some love and support too. And ever since then, Kendra Cost, it was so amazing. Anytime there was a student death, whether it be on campus at Greek House, wherever, she'd give either Dr. Burks or myself a call. Hey, where do you need us? When do you need us? And that she would get 1 or 2 teams, and then to go, and then we'd go. A couple counselors would go, and we'd team up, and it just became basically, hand fit glove perfectly. It was such a great match, and so after that, like I said, we continued to utilize them on a very, very consistent basis in those situations, as well as the ongoing, go to the library, go to the reboot center, all those type of things, just, general stress management and just fun for the students. We could also use them in a crisis management way that was very, very effective. And so, so that was Monday. And then all throughout that week, career services was great. They opened up a bunch of their suites, and then we just had, consistently Pete's Pet Posse teams up there for the students all throughout that following week after the homecoming tragedy.
And have people show up?
Mm.
Students come?
Oh yeah, they would just be all around whatever pup was there, down on the floor with them, just kind of again petting them, scratching me on the ear, just getting some of that support. That words don't quite do the same thing. Words are important, but this is just a different type of support, and it just hits a different way.
I can imagine that the handlers may have needed some extra support from.
Right. Yeah, because they're amazing at what they do, and we always talk about making sure you're recharging your own batteries. That there's times where you have to unplug and you have to take care of yourself, and we check in with them and try to do continuing education with them on self-care. And so that's actually just sent an email this morning about dealing with students in distress, and part of my presentation is making sure that you're taking care of yourself.
And that applies to yourself too, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I'm very, very blessed to have an amazing wife who's also a psychologist. She is Dr. Trevor Richardson, the EAP psychologist on campus, and she had worked in university counseling previously as well. So when we were both there, we could just talk about our day when we came home. Now we can talk about it, but we have to talk about it in a little bit different way because of confidentiality. We can't just share, I was working with so-and-so today. So we're ethical about it, but I feel like we do a good job of checking in with each other, and then have 2 kiddos who, doesn't matter how your day was, they have their life and they're focused on them. And so that helps me pull myself out of that. And so going all the way back to that job I had before graduate school, I've learned about the importance of being able to, when I'm here, be completely present with whoever I'm working with, but then working on leaving that here and then being completely present with my wife, with my family, with my kids, with my friends, that type of stuff. And that sometimes it's harder to do than other times, but it's still something that I'm very intentional about practicing that.
That's when you need to drive a long way between here and home.
Mm-hmm.
Get it out before you get there.
Yeah, a good podcast or some good music, or sometimes it's just silence and just, looking at the trees, or, looking at, whatever is out the window type of stuff, and just doing that mindful meditation type stuff. Yeah.
Well, after doing some of this with Pete's Pet Posse, did you do any further research on pet therapy type things?
I did not. We had a substance abuse counselor at the time who was really interested in it, and she went and did some additional training to the point, and she actually went through the program and got her dog certified through P3. Did the two testing and stuff like that. And so she would bring her dog, Mr. Biggs was his name. She would bring Mr. Biggs into the counseling center on a real regular basis, and she did that training where she was able to implement him into actual therapy that she was doing in the session. And so just talking with her, I didn't do it myself, but talking with her, I learned quite a bit through her process.
Were you tempted to get your own dog?
Well, we do have a dog, Star, at home, and it's tempting to do that. But with what I do, I can't justify the time that it would take away from what I'm doing. So I don't know if it's hypocritical or not. I'm always encouraging. I talked to my wife about, hey, do you want to do that? Because she was very good friends with Elizabeth Lorman, who used to be the dietitian on campus. And she had Chico.
Yeah.
Yep. And so Chico was just a mainstay over there. And Elizabeth utilized Chico really, really well, and very, very popular. And so I joked with my wife about her taking Star through the program, and she's like, no, you can do it. I don't know how good Star would do. She needs to mature or something.
Is there one at Gallagher?
Yes, we have right now. It's grown in the last 3 years. We had one, and then another volunteer down at Academic Services. She was partial to, she did spend some time here, and so she's very well known. So we had two initially when I first started broaching the idea of, like they do at the library and reboot center, where they have those consistent, we come, this week at this day at this time, that type of stuff. And so I talked with people, and there was a little, dragging the feet at first, but then once we started bringing them in, everyone was like, oh yeah, this is a great idea. And so we started with two, and they would alternate on weeks. And then we got a third one the next year. And now we're up to five different.
One a day, huh?
Well, yeah, we don't. Yeah, we typically found the sweet spot being early in the week and down in the lobby by the Remember the 10 Memorial, because a lot of student athletes come through there for the academic services. But we want it outside of the academic services because they get a lot of business done. We don't want to be a distraction. So that lobby just gets a lot of traffic, and it's not too far from the training room. So I'm excited about continuing to find different ways to implement the piece of Pet Posse into what we're doing. So right now it's just they're there, and then as student athletes come and go, they can get a couple good pets in or take a picture, or let someone do the selfies and get you see some of these great big tall basketball players getting down on the floor and rolling around with the dogs and stuff like that. So it's fun.
Yeah, like the Pyrenees, I guess, the bigger ones.
yeah, they wouldn't have to bend down so far. But yeah, they don't discriminate. Whichever one's there, they usually have a good time with.
Are you calling it a certain thing? I mean, there seems to be neat names for these.
Oh, there are a lot of creative names. We haven't. Sometimes when we have it on Mondays, we'll call it Mental Health Monday, but we haven't come up with anything
it's like
snazzy.
Monday.
Yeah.
And rough reboot, and just all kinds of cute things. So that'll be your next.
Yeah, you did work on the marketing there. That's good.
Something goes with Gallagher, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll think about that. If you come up with any ideas, please let me know.
I'm going to ask some students to have a contest. There you go. What are you going to call it?
That would be a good idea.
So let's talk a little bit about working with Dr. Burks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Susie's great from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
Just say a few things about her, and then the transition into Pet Posse as on the board.
Well, I hold a very, very special place in my heart because my first doing the formal counseling experience was there at University Counseling Services, and over the years I spent probably 15 years at the counseling center in various capacities, from master's practicum counselor all the way up to director. And so I got to see it a lot of different ways, and she was present for the vast. Well, even after she retired, she was still always available to me if I needed to consult, when I was sitting in her old office and making a lot of different decisions. Like I said, she holds a very special place in my heart because, she's one I went to after my first year doing counseling. I asked her for a letter of recommendation for the PhD program, and she wrote it. And I still remember that very, very clearly, that she'd do that for me. And she's definitely had a significant impact on my career trajectory, and hiring me back full time, and then being able to promote me in different roles from coordinator to assistant director, and then encouraging me to work towards the director position, yeah, she's been there in a lot of different ways and had such an impact, because you go back and look at a lot of newspaper clippings from the 2001 plane crash, and she's right there with Eddie Sutton, with the athletic departments, with the athletic, and then going through it again, 2011. It's like, wait a minute, no, nobody's supposed to go through this once, let alone twice. And she was at the forefront. And then 2015, and she was just consistently there. When the university needed her in those capacities, she stepped up, and we as the counseling center staff followed her lead, and he just let us know what to do, and we got our general plan, and we followed through with it the best we could. And so she just, the love she has for this university and for the students, and how much she's given over the years can't be overstated.
Okay, and then when she decided to retire, you had said that you took her spot on the board, advisory board.
Correct. Yep.
Tell us a little bit about what that role is on being on the board. What would some of the things you'd be doing? Yeah,
I didn't know exactly what I'd be getting into. I knew there was great people on there, and I knew Susie was a huge advocate of Pete's Pet Posse, and I was aware of it. But then, like I said, through in 2015, became more intimately aware of how it can be really, really effective. And so, as far as what makes it go, I just knew, Kendra is always working her tail off. That she just, feels like the lifeblood of the program. She just makes it go. So Kendra reached out to me, and I was really surprised, because I just thought of, oh, me? You want me to be on that? Well, yeah, we want counseling services to continue to be involved. I said, oh, well, that makes perfect sense. So yeah, I said, I'll definitely make time for that if you're serious about wanting me in there. And I don't know what I'm going to bring to it, but I'll show up. So the board just gets to make overarching decisions on the direction of the program. And obviously Kendra is there day in, day out, has a lot of great information, and was able to provide the entire board with, okay, here are things going on, whether it be concerns or whether it be, here are celebrations that we want to make sure everybody knows about. When it got to the point where it was so successful, and as far as growing the program, the board would get together and try to strategically make decisions to help it grow in a way that's going to be sustainable. We don't want to grow too big too fast and trip over our own feet type of deal. So trying to rein it in enough, but still encourage that. And some of that was consulting with other universities and things like that would hear about us and say, how are you doing that? We want to try something like that. But a lot of it was then but several branch campuses, starting up their programs and supporting them and reaching out to them. And so a lot of different angles there. And then just kind of the dollars and cents. It's that doesn't come easy, but the more we get out there, then we have some really, really wonderful donors, and a lot of students donate. You don't think of them as, but whether it be $5-10 enough to do that, and that makes a difference, and that keeps it going, and that allows to look professional. The best that the dogs wear are really cool and professional looking, and this is not just a bring your pet to school program. This is a legitimate, these are therapy dogs, and they have a job, and they know their job, and they do their job very, very well. They dress for success. And so, all that costs money. And so the board just have different ideas on fundraisers and what we can do to continue to be successful.
How often would you meet, like the time commitment?
Typically once a month.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah.
And then were you involved with the selection of the handler and dog, the teams?
Right. Yeah, that's something. Yeah. So we have a smaller committee who does interviews with the people, and then we have our trainer, and then our vet med school. They do disposition checks with the dogs, so they interview too, and then those committees compile the information and then bring it back to the board. And then we go through and discuss each person, and then the board votes on if we feel like that team, that person and dog would be a good fit to go through the process. And so, yeah, sometimes that can be really, really tough because, again, the popularity. So, at first, there might be 12 applications for 10 spots. 10 spot, it averages 10 spots a year. But then all of a sudden you're getting 30, 35 applications, and you got to whittle that down to 10 because that's all that the program can sustain right now with, go through training and what that costs and everything like that. So it's some of them are no brainers, but a lot of them are just so many could be really really good, and it's tough to say. All right, but then Kindred is really good about giving feedback and saying, hey, we encourage you to maybe try this and this and apply again next year.
So how many are they up to these days, doc teams?
Oh, I think active teams on campus, I think we have, I want to say 60.
Oh, that's a lot. From 8,
Yeah.
from the beginning, 8.
Right. And so we, just this last class that went through, there was actually 20 because the year before, because of COVID, weren't able to do it. So to try and keep with what our trajectory was 4 years ago, we made the decision to bring in 2 classes at once, and our trainer did a magnificent job, and they got through and just had their baccalaureate celebration here not too long ago where they graduated, and it was a lot of fun.
Well, if you bring 10 on, does that mean 10 roll off usually?
No, we don't want that to happen. Some naturally lose interest or move away. Unfortunately, once in a while we have a pup pass away, but typically we don't lose 10 every year. But the demand is such that we can bring on 10, we can bring on 20, and there's still plenty of demand that everybody can show up to, about as many as they want to show up to.
So just keep getting bigger then.
Right. Yeah. Victim of our own success type of a deal that more people are constantly reaching out to Kendria in the office and asking for, hey, can we get a team here on such and such day, and that is, so those type of requests just continue to exponentially rise, as well as the scheduled meetings at scheduled times at Reboot Center, at the library, things like that have been mainstays for years now.
Well, those people out on campus that want to be selected, do they contact people on the board and say, hey, give us the inside scoop? Sometimes
I've had people reach out to me, but I'm sure Kendra gets much more of that than I get, being there in the office. I bet she feels a lot of those calls and emails.
And then do you have anything to do, does the board have anything to do with selection of the Rough Riders?
That is more of Kendria and a committee that makes those. Just because she's so integral in the day-to-day, and she knows at this point that Rough Rider program wasn't part of the original plan, but then find students that are getting interested, and it just organically happened. And Kendria, just knowing, it's been multiple years now, knows what types of students tend to work out really, really well. And so she makes a lot of those decisions. Okay, and then you're currently still on the board. So you would have been involved with the decision to create the garden, the Pet Posse garden? Mm-hmm. You'll talk a little bit about that part. I loved being there on the unveiling, because I can't think of any person that more deserved to be that statue than Kendria. So her being the statue there was, I think, very, very fitting. So that's her? Yep. Okay. Yep. And you don't know that if you just walk by. Right. Yeah, you have to look real close, and you have to know Kendria. But I remember, Aunt Hargis said, we're keeping this a secret. Don't tell. She didn't know? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that's what stands out to me the most, that she's just been the heart and soul of this program for so long, and a lot of the growth can be attributed. It's just a lot of people, but a lot of it goes back to Kendria, and so I was so happy for her. And then she's definitely not one to brag about her accomplishments or anything like that. She's so modest that she would never ask to be memorialized in a statue, but she's definitely the one that deserves it. And so that's just I think another point of how our university is embracing it, that they wanted to spend some of the space and just show what it means, and has just become part of the fabric of our university. Did the P3 program have to come up with the funds for it? Do you recall? I can't recall on that one. I think that might have been university funds, but I'm not positive on that. You would probably, the board would, you would know though. Maybe a donor. That was, I think, right before I transitioned on the board. Okay. Or
I think they unveiled it in 2018.
Okay, so yeah, I was okay. Yeah, I think that was university funded or a donor. Yeah,
Okay,
but it's
fine.
yeah.
Well, what was her reaction when she saw it? Did she realize it was her?
It just took just a little bit, and then yeah, she's a bit emotional, and I think she's really honored. Yeah.
What about the pup?
It's not her pup Charlie who was originally in there with her. I forget who
Looks
they
like a
modeled.
schnauzer.
Yeah, I forget who they modeled the dog after. Yeah, I can't.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool though. It is nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you guys talking about what's coming next?
Yeah, the 10-year anniversary. Trying to do that right and respect the program and really market it and get that out there just as a different way for more and more people to learn about it. And really, I think if we just keep doing what we're doing, I think it's going to continue growing in the right way. And so, hopefully at some point, we could get a series of donations or one nice big donation and get a building specifically for Pete's Pet Posse. I think that would be wonderful, and then that would be get some staff in there that are full-time for this to help support Kendria and the rest of them. That's the big dreams that we're having now.
Yeah, and then the trading cards, I don't know at what point they came into being. Were they already in using them when you came on the board?
That was something that I believe they did, because I remember coming back from an overseas trip, and there was a dog going through the airport, and it was a therapy dog, and the guy was handing out cards. And so I told Dr. Burks about that. I said, oh, wouldn't that be cool if P3 got that? And I don't know if they were already talking about that or not, but it was within a couple of years that they had those, and now Kendra says they just can't keep them in because they got people that are avid collectors that want to collect the whole group. And so I think that's another fun way to interact and market the program and get people involved. I was going to say get students involved, but there's a lot of staff that collect them as well.
And then I've seen a bumper sticker early on that was "Shed Happens."
Yep. Yeah, a little play on words there, and so some of those bumper stickers, and then just the P3 symbol, and so just different ways we can get that out there, and now they sell polos and sweatshirts and tumblers and all sorts of water bottles, stuff like that. You can get all sorts of stuff with the P3 logo on it.
And that, as a board, you decide what those items are going to be.
We have some input. I think a lot of that falls back to Kendra seeing things that, and we trust her implicitly on those decisions, stuff like that. Yeah. And then getting the deal with the Eskimo Joes, them putting out that's a very, very big deal. Yeah. Yeah. So I haven't seen any numbers on how many shirts that have been sold there, but we're very excited to team up with them.
I got one.
Great partner. Okay, great. Yeah, they're a wonderful partner. Always been a wonderful partner for OSU. So we're really honored to be able to partner with them.
Okay, and then being in athletics, I understand sometimes the P3 would come for the coaches versus cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Things you would speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, again, another thing that Kendra's spare time that she does organizes that. So she got me involved in that years ago. Just asked if I would want to volunteer, and after the first time, I was hooked. And so the dogs come out there and just getting to see the families, but not just the families. The golfers that are there too, that are donating their time and their resources towards this. It's unfortunate that kids go through that, but I'm glad there's people that come together and support them that way. And having the dogs out there is just another way where the kids can just relax and hug on these dogs and just see the smile on their face that it seems like for that day they don't have to worry about the cancer stuff and they can just be kids.
How many usually come, the dogs? How many do they typically have?
I think this last time there was probably at least 3 or 4. So I think it might vary from year to year, but usually they get a few out there.
And they're allowed in the arena.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Was that a problem initially getting like the facilities manager to be okay with?
Oh, Kyle Waters here, he oversees facilities. He's outstanding. He's when I first talked to him about the we want them to show up on a regular basis here down in the lobby. Yeah, he was completely for. He said, just let me know when and where. And yeah, he was wonderful about it. Yeah, and the staff and the custodial staff, they get down there and hug on them too. So yeah, I think everybody around realizes, okay, they're well trained. They're not going to come in. They're not going to make a big mess. After you see them in action, and then they embrace them, even if they were a little bit hesitant at first. Lots of times those people end up embracing them fully.
Well, that particular area is not carpeted, so that probably it makes it a little easier.
Yeah.
For places that have carpet. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and we haven't. I can't think of any place we've gone in the building with places with carpet, just because that place is just so ideal, just because of the foot traffic, and it's very, very visible. So I think it's a win-win all around, because if there was an accident, it'd be easy to clean up off the tile.
Yes. Yeah, I was they had Smooch a Pooch in the library this past February, and they brought a couple of them up on the second floor where it's carpeted.
Yeah.
And it took a while to get all the fluff vacuumed up, because the carpet's brown.
Oh,
so a white dog on a brown carpet takes a little while.
Yeah.
No complaints. It just
that's just part of it. Yeah.
And they had such a turnout. It was great. People come through the library a lot just for that.
Yeah.
Did you spend much time in the library when you were a student?
I did. Back then, it wasn't quite as easy to do as much online research. So I did. Yeah.
Did you have a favorite spot?
I think I spent a lot of time up in the second floor at that bank of computers, because I could look up the research and get it printed out right there, and then once in a while, if one of my classmates was on the ball and they reserved one of those study rooms back off to the side, those were always pretty nice too.
Yeah. Well, they've moved all that around now. The second floor doesn't have computers. They're all on the first floor now.
Okay.
Well, most of them are on the first floor.
I'm gonna have to get over there and see what's new. You can tell it's been a while since I've been in there.
It's been a while, yes.
Yeah.
Well, back in my day, it was card catalog, so you were were after me.
Yeah, I remember those days from back at Carson Macedonia Elementary School, and
So let's switch gears just a little bit too. For those who might not know, what does being a sports psychologist entail? Like a typical day for you?
Okay. I've had that question asked to me a lot of times, and I kind of chuckle and I said, so what is typical? Really, it varies a lot. So, and that's what I like about the job. But the vast majority of what I do is mental health counseling. So one-on-one here in the office. Now, being trained as a sports psychologist, I'm also able to do performance enhancement work. So mental work specifically to their sport, whether it be stress management, helping calm down when you're shooting a free throw, which increases your free throw percentage, or just mental imagery before doing the long jump, or whatever it is. There's lots of different things that you can do, but it's just tapping into that mental part. And what I tell a lot of the student athletes is, the farther you go in any field, whether we're talking about sport, art, music, business, whatever it is, the more and more physical talents start to even out at some point. And so what you're doing between the ears starts to matter more and more and more. Whereas a lot of these student athletes could just show up in high school and just dominate. But then now you're at a D1 institution and playing your sport, and you're going against other people who could just show up and dominate. So what are you going to do to mentally prepare? And that can make a big, big difference. So that's a part of what I do. We do that individually in here, but then also go out and do team presentations where we talk about those aspects and have discussions with the team. And then, thank goodness there hasn't been one recently, but available for if there was ever, any type of team crisis, things like that, can reach out to the coaches, the training staff, the academic staff, and the student athletes, and work together on plans to help respond to them in an effective way, and provide educational outreach experiences for the student athletes, and just a lot of it is just reminding them, okay, we have now, not just me, we have a team here as far as behavioral health that is here for your support.
Do you focus on a particular sport, or do you do across the board?
So since last August, we brought on two counselors, as well as our psychiatrist who oversees behavioral health here from the Center for Health Sciences over in Tulsa. And then what we did is we broke it up where I have 5 teams, and one of the counselors has 5 teams, and the other counselor has 3 teams, and she's part-time. And we're just the liaison to those teams. So not that all those student athletes have to see us for individual therapy, but we're just responsible for connecting with those teams on a real consistent basis so that we're available, so that we're visible, so that we're normalized. And that way they recognize, oh yeah, that guy that comes to practice on a regular basis, I could reach out to him and talk about that stuff. So that's worked out really well, because when I was the only one, I got very busy very quickly and didn't have much time to be out of the office, because there's many weeks where 30 hours of my week was booked up just in individual, and then I'd have to do the documentation of that, and so then I wasn't able to get out as much and really educate the student athletes on, we have these services available for you. So that's
preventative.
Right.
Preventative.
And that's exactly what I talked to powers that be about. That before they hired me, I said, okay, I've seen this happen many times. I have colleagues, that are doing this all across the country. In so many places, after they hired that first position, within 3 years, they're hiring a second or a third position. And so for us, it was 4 years, and then we hired 2 more. Yeah.
So have there been some students that you've helped along the way that have decided they want to follow in your shoes and be a...
I've had multiple that have talked to me about this field.
Wow.
And so I just say, hey, I'm a resource for you right now, but down the road, if you're doing this profession, don't hesitate to reach out. And I can tell you the things that I wish I would have known when I was doing my undergrad, and I could have, carved a little bit different path. It worked out great for me in the long run, but it could have, been more efficient if I would have known. But just not as much stuff was known about this back then.
So does OSU, do we have one? I don't.
We don't have any
Sports psychology specific.
Not any degree or minor or anything like that in it. And so what I did was at the time, there was a professor who taught a sports psychology class and exercise psychology class. So I took his courses. He was on my dissertation committee and did my dissertation in the area of exercise psychology. And then when I was at Kansas State University at my predoctoral internship, they had a specific sports psychology rotation where the psychologist who was supervising me was the connection to the athletic department there. So I got to work with their student athletes and get hands-on direct supervision for that. So that's doing that type of training, and then having certain classes that I have meet the criteria that American Psychological Association Division 47 sport exercise and performance psychology. That's what they talk about for ethical sports psychologists are going to have training and coursework in these areas. And so that's what I did. I pieced it together. Whereas there's programs across the country that there are more and more that you can get a master's in sports psychology and a PhD in counseling or clinical psychology going through all at the same time. So it's really, there's a great program run by a guy I know out in Denver, and then another great program down at University of North Texas, and then Boston University has one. And so there's more and more of those. So I would love it if OSU could get a couple sports psychology professors in, and then they could team up with our clinical and counseling psychology programs. I think it would be wonderful, because I have very frequently, I have undergraduate students from across the country that will just email me out of the blue and say, hey, do you have any internship opportunities, or do you have any of this? Or, I'll do it for free. And, unfortunately I have to say no, but what I always do with them, if you want, let's set up a call and I'll just talk with you about what could be helpful for you, what you could be doing right now that could set you up for that next thing, which could set you up for that next thing, which could end up, if you do enough of those things, could end up in them, doing this type of work.
Well, that's next on your radar to pursue here at OSU.
That would be great. Yeah,
start the wheels turning.
Yeah. So that's something that I've thrown out to different people on the academic side and said I'd be willing to help on and I have supervised one PhD student over here, and then hopeful that there'll be another one coming on very soon. Wow. So it's not necessarily a formalized where we have one every year, but when I find motivated students that are showing me some experience and showing me a lot of motivation, I'm more than willing to work with them. And so there's one that I did some work on the side with, not in the athletic department, but actually with the Tulsa Ballet. and she and I worked together and did a program for some of their dancers over there, which was a fun new challenge for me. And then we're working on getting an assistantship for her because she's real sharp, and I think she'd be a great addition over here. And yeah, I would love to be able to supervise her and give her, that whole paying it forward idea that I had people along the way that gave me some time and gave me some supervision and some knowledge that is invaluable. So I think it's important to do that for our field.
And then introduce them to P3.
Right.
Along the way.
Yeah, exactly right. Because that's something that, I've talked to multiple of my colleagues, and I had a colleague from University of Mississippi reach out to me and say, could you tell me more about that program? That's something we're interested in, if we could get going here. And so my colleague down at Auburn, he's the director of the counseling center there, and he's got 2 or 3 therapy dogs himself. And I talked to him about, hey, if you can get Auburn doing this, then it's got, because when he does retire, hopefully it's not anytime soon, but when he does retire, is there someone that will take it and run with it, and if you're just betting on that, okay, I'll get one person to do it, and then that person will get one person to do it when they leave, and then that's a lot bigger risk. When you have an established program, it's not so much pressure on one person. It's many hands make light work type of approach that this is an established program, and there's so many established teams already that they're going to keep going. And then unfortunately someday Kendra will have to retire, and that'll be a very sad day, but hopefully that's not for another 50 or 60 years, hopefully. But it's she and Hargis and the original advisory board did such a good job of getting those roots, knowing this is what the core of the program is, that it's established so well that it's going to continue living on for many, many years after I'm gone.
Yeah, you wonder if they thought it would be here 10 years from then, or just as surprised as it happened really quickly. I guess 10 years flew by.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah, it did. It's hard to think.
Have you gone around to like conferences and things like that and presented on P3 in your role?
I presented one time on it. I know. Let's see. There's someone on the faculty side that presented one time on it as well. And I've offered, so I go to this group of sports psychologists annually, and so I've offered that, hey, we had some people come in from the San Francisco Giants who talked about their use of a therapy dog. I said, well, I could talk about a more systemic approach to that if anybody's interested. And so at some point I might push a little harder and do a presentation on that and see what they think. Because when I've just talked to people one-on-one, like their eyes light up like, OSU does that? How did they do that? How'd that happen? Didn't happen overnight, but as far as the popularity, it felt like it was popular overnight.
Yeah, it's been 10 years has gone by really fast. I can keep coming back to that, being in the counseling role, and people are out, the handlers and they're out doing their thing. Do they ever come back to you and say, here's a student that really needs some extra help or whatever?
And that's one of the things that's built into the program is continuing education for the owner handlers. And so we try to split that up, half of that being focused on the human and half that being focused on the dog. So usually we'll get someone from the vet college to do different things on dog health and how to be aware and keep your dog healthy. And then lots of times I'll help. Either I'll do it or I'll organize people from the counseling center, or we have I think I mentioned the EAP psychologist a little bit earlier, and I'm partial to her. I think she's wonderful, and she's done some presentations for them that have been really, really well received. But part of that is coping with students in distress. All right, that idea of assessing them, and if it's pressing, all right, we might have to, this appearance might have to be a little bit shorter, and or that's where the Rough Riders can come in. We're gonna call the counseling center, or we're gonna walk them up to the counseling center. And so we just talk about, all right, assessing where maybe you give them a card or you give them the number versus you walk them up and just kind of being able to assess what they need to do, just asking a couple questions, knowing what their role is and knowing where their boundary is, and they have to take care of themselves. And they don't have to be the psychologist, they just have to know where those resources are available. And so, that could be counseling, or it could be that they start, talking about how stressed they are about about money or, their loans or stuff like that. And so knowing, oh, well, we can get you over to the scholarship and financial aid office and just, again, them knowing the resources real well. So that way, at any particular moment, they can send them the right way. And lots of times it's more focused on the mental health side of things.
So you'll have to do that with each new class, each new baccalaureate.
What we do is we
Yeah.
advertise that. Okay, so for instance, this September I'm going to be doing a presentation called "Dealing with Students in Distress,"
Okay.
and so then advertise it to them, and then whoever wants to can come. We don't force them to, but we strongly encourage them because the way I do it is I'll spend part of the hour presenting information, referral resources, what to look for, all that type of stuff. But I always try to carve out a time where we have discussion because a lot of the veterans will jump on these Zoom presentations and they have great insight. And so then I put it out to them. What have you seen that's worked? What have you seen that hasn't worked? Let's get a discussion going because there's so much expertise beyond just, I have a certain part of expertise, but they have that hands-on, okay, when you're out at an appearance and you see this, that's a red flag that you want to kind of keep an eye on that student and we get great discussions going. And I learn a lot from those. So,
do people on the board do you know how long you'll serve? I mean, are there terms, or you could just stay on as long as you want, or as long as they'll have you?
I don't know. I said yes, and I just keep showing up.
You've
and
never been asked again.
They haven't asked me to leave,
Okay.
so I guess that's a good thing. We recently, this last couple of years, went through a restructuring, and just because the program was getting so successful and big that had to restructure, some of the aspects of it to try and make sure that it continues growing in the right direction. And so, I think during that time, I'm blanking on it, but I think during that time we talked maybe some about term limits. But as of right now, I don't know how limited. Yeah, because we get people who are continuing to show up and put in the work, and Kendra wants to keep that team together.
Is that
Yeah,
continuity helps too.
All volunteer, and we all have our full-time gig that we have to keep our bosses happy. But typically we all have bosses that are encouraging us being this because they see the value of the program. So that's what's so great about the program. There's ownership from so many different departments and schools on campus in a lot of different ways, whether they allow those, pups to come in to their area, whether they allow their people to spend time doing it, but just so many different ways that people can be supportive of it.
Yeah. I'm thinking with when you switched from the student union over here, they kept you on. They didn't replace you with the new director.
No, that's and I talked with Kendra. I said, I'm going to miss it. I understand if you have to take me off. And she says, no. We would love to be able to have that relationship with athletics. I'm like, oh well, yeah, that makes sense because I'm going to do nothing but speak highly of the program to anyone that'll listen over here. And now, like I said, we're up to 5 pups, with staff in-house.
A new area of growth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it is.
I wonder what area on campus is left to get the feet straight.
That is also part of the discussion when we're doing who is going to come into the training class. Mm-hmm. All right, how many dogs do we have in this area? How do we have, and so if it's really really close between the people and the dogs, then okay, do we have a dog in that area or that area, or so that's part of it where we're first and foremost looking for the best fit for the program because that's going to continue to help it be successful. But we're always excited when we get a team in a new area just because it's we want to reach everyone.
Yeah, I don't know if the library has a current one. We used to have one. Luma was in the library, but she switched departments out of the library. So I don't know who. I don't know if we have one now or not. I haven't to go
it feels like you have a lot of them because you have
they come in
which
the
is
lobby
nice.
A lot.
But then there's also nice when you have those colleagues that bring them in and they're in the office and you can just poke your head in and give them a little scratch here and there, outside their appearances. So
has the board been asked if cats can be included instead of dogs?
I think there's been quite a few different requests. But
not just cats, huh?
yeah, a lot of different animals. So the decision has been made at this
Just
point.
dogs.
We're going to stick with dogs. That's our deal. We're not going to do miniature ponies or cats or hippos or anything.
Has the board decided if there's a certain breed that just doesn't work?
That's never
Okay.
come up. I think it's more so that individual dog, and since they go through a disposition check with both the vet med school and the trainer, we usually feel pretty confident that they're going to be successful in the program, because there's a lot of experience between the people that check them out before they're ever entered into the program.
Yeah, and I noticed they don't wear muzzles. So I mean
No.
I mean that'd be hard. I think that's probably a no then if they need to.
Well, I think if they had to wear a muzzle, they probably don't have the right disposition to be real approachable.
I mean but the board doesn't even require even the ones that don't need it to wear one just for insurance purposes or safety issues or anything like that.
Yeah, have been very confident in the training and very confident in the teams, and that's just a lot different feel. As far as psychologically, when you come up and that dog has a muzzle on, and if you can say, "Oh no, it's just preventative," it's just that. But if I'm a student, I'm like, "Oh, do I really want to pet that dog if it needs a muzzle because it could still scratch me or jump on me or this or that?" And so, I think it would just be an entirely different feel to those appearances. Yeah.
Kind of like wearing a mask for COVID. Huh? No, it's similar, but not the same. I know.
Uh-huh.
But while we're there, COVID, how did it impact the P3 or what you did here?
It was really, really tough, and I think that's where Kendria did a good job, where they started doing Zoom meetings. So it's not the same as getting to pet them, but you still get to see them, and they would do Zoom appearances, and then when things started to open up again, the board agreed, and Kendria communicated to all of them, all right, as far as the owner handlers, we want you to do what you're comfortable with. We can't make you show up to an appearance or anything like that and make you sign up for it, but we want you to do with what you're comfortable with. And so it was slow going at first, and there was a few that would step out there and do that, but then as people got more comfortable and the vaccine became more readily available, and people felt like, all right, we're doing this as safe as we can, then we started getting either because the requests were still there. They still wanted to see the dogs, but we just had to prioritize the safety of everybody involved and make the best decisions we could, and so I think we were able to work back from it, and now it's going full tilt.
What about in your day-to-day work? How did COVID impact what you do?
So, I think it expedited the whole telehealth industry, because that was available before, but very, very few people were utilizing it. And I think that was less on the student side of things and more on the provider side of things. It feels different being in person than it does face to face on a screen. But I think students are of the age where they're much more okay with that. And so what COVID did is, all right, we had to do all of our sessions via a secure video conference. So it was HIPAA compliant, but we do that. And so then people were realizing, oh, we can get some good work done through video screens. Again, maybe it's my age, but I still prefer being in the office together and be able to just see all the body language and everything like that, because you're cut down a lot of it, but you can still get a lot of good stuff done. And for someone that you're not going to reach otherwise, getting to interact through a video conference is exponentially better than nothing at all. So I think that changed the perspective of a lot of people in mental health, and that fast forwarded, I think, several years, because that's all we could do. And then we realized, all right, as things open back up, why would we limit ourselves? Let's still make that available, as long as we're doing it the right way and doing it in a way that they're healthy or they're safe and things like that. So.
Are you still doing it like the hybrid form of it now?
Mm-hmm.
Still?
Yep. I still make that available to the student athletes if that's something they choose.
Percentage-wise, how many do? I mean,
it's pretty small now, because
but still it's an option.
Yeah, it's still an option. And lots of times if if they're traveling, somewhere and it's a place where, I'm licensed and things like that. So I have to make sure that's on my side of things. Ethically, I have to let them know, well, if you're going to another place where I'm not licensed, ethically, I can't do that. But if you're in the state of Oklahoma and you're just home, we can do that, and that's completely ethical because I'm licensed in the state. So after I explain all that, some of them will still do that, but the vast majority prefer to come in. I think part of that is the athletics department there spent a lot of time in this building. If they're not at training table, then they come over and they're in the academic center or they're in the training room downstairs, and it's just convenient to go up a couple flights of stairs or up the elevator, and I'm just right here. So they think, yeah, I'll just go ahead and meet in person rather than over the video conference.
If you do performance type stuff, do you get to go to some of the away games if you're working with a particular player?
We make that available to our teams. I have not done that. One of our other counselors did that with one of the teams he was working with this last spring, and so we're available for that if they want that.
So, like if it's a home game, you're working like a basketball player. Do you go to the game and watch?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't sit down on the bench or anything like that, but yeah, I can sit very close proximity, and I get to watch just not the game, but I watch the bench and body language and interaction with the coaches, and so I can, next time I see them, I can comment on, oh, I noticed this and this and this, and and I found that they like that. They like, oh, I'm important enough that you show up and you pay attention, not just in this meeting, but in other ways. And so, yeah, that really, that's what's interesting about this subspecialty of psychology is that you can see them in a different way. Whereas when I was up at the counseling center, it'd be pretty awkward if I just showed up to watch someone take a chemistry exam. Bad joke. I never did that, but that just wasn't an option. Whereas now I get to see my clients in a performance setting and can provide different insight. Or going down to practice, which is we have more access there where I can be right there and sit on the bench and watch them, and it's not a huge crowd, and I can comment to them, oh, I noticed this and this, or I noticed you implementing what we talked about and just reinforcing different things or giving feedback. So the practice, I find it's both aspects. Competition and practice are both very helpful to be able to view.
I'm thinking for a golfer, going out to the Karsten Creek and watching them be a little bit more difficult to do, I guess.
Yeah, that would be very time intensive. Yes. But the golf team is one of the, I've talked with both coaches, about, hey, some things I can do. I can't be out there, every afternoon of every day. But what I can do is I can set time aside in my schedule where I can come out and talk with one of the coaches about get trained on something they're doing, so that way I can provide some more feedback and they can maximize this program that they're using, which is up my alley. So, yeah.
What was the biggest challenge starting a position that was not a position before? Creating it basically.
So there's a lot.
Yeah.
I think just getting buy-in and just getting known. But then by all the coaching, by all the trainers, by all that type of stuff. But then, by the time it didn't take too long to, like I said, get myself really, really full. And so then I didn't have the time to go out and do the relationship building. That trust building is so, so important, because we're talking about these coaches who, are like a lot of people there. I want to be in control. I want to know who's saying what to the student athletes because I want them to get my message. I don't want them to get, conflicting messages and then not know what to do come game time. And so building those relationships with the coaches was very, very important. And, but when I did that, I can think of some coaches that said, okay, yeah, you can go ahead and meet with them. And me and my coaching staff won't be there. That to me was the gold star of trust, that we don't have to hear what you're saying. We trust that what you're going to do is going to be in their best interest and help them as individuals, which overall helps the team.
It makes you feel good at the end of the day, doesn't it?
Yeah, that doing business the right way, and just being honest about what I can and can't do, and don't just say yes just to say yes, and don't overpromise things that I'm not trained or I can't provide. Whether it be my training or whether it be my time or whatever it be, just be honest about, here's my assessment, here's what I can do, and then let them decide on what they want to move on. And then if they say yes, then just make sure you do a good job.
Is it usually a 40-hour a week, give or take?
Ish. Yeah. During different times it's quite a bit more, but during this time of year, it's flexible. So yeah, it's like you said, give or take.
Do you have to do like continuing education things to keep your license up and things?
Yep. I'm required to do 20 continuing education units per year.
And if you're traveling with the team, like you said, out of state, you can't give any.
So what I can do is I can reach out to the board of that state and get a temporary exemption.
But for just one game, you probably wouldn't do that necessarily.
Well, I would, yeah. So if coaches are interested in me starting to do that, I'm just going to ask them, all right, you let me know ahead of time. Give me a week or so ahead of time when you're going to want me to travel. And then I would reach out to those boards and hopefully hear back from them. But especially during COVID, a lot of those boards really loosened up those restrictions because because so many students were leaving the university, but they were going to their home state, and those therapists, those providers at those counseling centers that were seeing them most likely wouldn't be licensed in these other states.
Well, that makes sense.
So they really loosened the restrictions so that way they could continue seeing these students as they went home and were doing distance-based learning stuff.
Okay. Well, you have come a long way since '98.
Yes, it's
and
been.
OSU's been lucky to get you here.
Well,
it sounds like.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you to say. I definitely feel lucky that we found each other.
Okay. Is there anything else that I need to ask about Pete's Pet Posse that I don't know to ask about?
I can't think. I feel like we covered a lot of ground, and it's just
The magic of the dogs.
Yeah.
What's the?
That gets to, like I was talking about before with the response to the homecoming tragedy, that magic is they just seem to know. They just have some intuition about who could need them. And like I said, that example where Mrs. Hargis was walking Scruff around and he just went up first to this one guy and kind of nuzzled his hand, and then the guy started scratching him Scruff behind the ear. And that to me is that magic. They just seem to know. And then again, like I've heard students and staff say that the dogs aren't going to judge me, and so it's just a lot easier to be disarmed around them. Mm-hmm. So I've seen that, and then I love hearing Mrs. Hargis talk about that too, because she's seen that time and time and time again too.
And I'll ask her about that when I do her.
Yeah,
I've seen the word positive, like PAW too. So it comes into some psychology there, doesn't it?
Yep.
A little bit.
Yep.
Okay, well, if you don't have anything else, then I'll ask, how do you want people to remember Trevor Richardson?
Oh, I just hope they think of me as someone who cares and works hard for the betterment of this university.
Okay, I think it's a done deal then.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I appreciate you doing this and highlighting this program.